Good afternoon and welcome to our regular council meeting for Monday, February 3rd, 2025. First item on the agenda is land acknowledgement. The town of Coaldale acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot peoples of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot peoples past, present, and future while recognizing their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The town of Coaldale is also home to Métis District 1 Foothills. Agenda item 1.2, conflict of interest declaration, pecuniary and non-pecuniary. Are there any in the room this afternoon? Councillor Saylor.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a conflict with item 8.1, the combined membership report. So I would just like to recuse myself for that item.
Thank you. Any others? Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2.1, acceptance of the agenda for our meeting today, February 3rd, 2025. Are there any additions or deletions? Seeing none, could I get someone to make a motion that council adopt the regular council meeting agenda for February the 3rd, 2025 as presented? Councillor Saylor makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to adoption of the previous minutes. Agenda item 3.1, the minutes from our regular council meeting from January 13th, 2025. Were there any errors or omissions in those minutes? Seeing none, could I get someone to make a motion that council adopt the regular council meeting minutes from January 13th, 2025 as presented? Councillor Pickering makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3.2, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from January 27th, 2025. Were there any errors or omissions in those minutes? Seeing none, could I get someone to make a motion that council adopt the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from January 27th, 2025 as presented? Deputy Mayor Chapman makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda 4.1, delegation by appointment. We have with us former member of council Doreen Lloyd. She's here to present on a history chart of Coaldale's Main Street. Doreen, whenever you have a moment, come sit up at presenter's table, turn your microphone on, and whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's kind of different sitting on this side of the table. Good to be here, though. Thank you so much. This is a forever project. I have been working on this for over 5 years, and it's so good to be here and just to see it in front of everybody. I started it 5 years ago when I made this book for Coaldale 100. What I did was I got all the businesses on Main Street, past and present. So the ones in the red are the present ones, and the ones in the black are the past ones, and the ones on the side street are the blue ones. There's 135 pictures on here and over 400 entries. It's definitely been a project of love. It started back in 2012 when the Heritage Committee did they did on for 13 different businesses. They did all the history, so that's where I got my start, and from there on I just built it onto all the other businesses. And what I mean by a forever business is because every time I talk to somebody else has something else to add or to change. It's one instance is really interesting. In the post office location, I had a freezing garage. Well, Bill Martin said that was my grandfather, and that was over here by the IGA. So I had Mandy change it. Then Tex Weeb comes along. He says, no, I worked for Friesen. It was by the post office location. So we had to change it again. So I've been meeting with Mandy for all year, almost every week for a whole year. She's been amazing, absolutely amazing and patient with me. Another incident was my uncle Pete's Plumbing. I had it at Newfield Industries location. Well, my cousin called and said, no, it was over here. So I had Mandy change it. Then I talking to my sister. She said, no, I worked for Uncle Pete. It was at Newfield Industries. So that's kind of the way the whole thing went. So it's been interesting, really interesting. Met a lot of interesting people, a lot of information I've checked through every yearbook for their business ads. Kate Andrews, Baker, and Alberta Mennonite High School. And so I got a lot of information from their ads. I could tell what year these businesses were in. So that was a good source of information. And then this little book has all the businesses from 1955 and before that. That was a good source of information. And my mother, she was great. She kept all the advertisements, all papers I had like crazy. So there was one here with Country Fried Chicken. Do you want to put that up on the screen? It says Country Fried Chicken, formerly Goodies from Woody's, next to the laundry basket. Well, there wasn't anybody in Coaldale that knew any of those, either of those locations. So finally, somebody knew about the laundry basket and knew who owned it, and she works at the Coaldale Food, so I went and talked to her. So I was able to get the dates of when they had that business. So it's been a fun project, a real fun project. So I want to donate this to the town, and hope you'll put it someplace where everybody can see it, talk about it. It's definitely a conversation piece. And I would like to also make it available to any businesses if they would like to have it. And I think the money that what paid for this was the money that I had left over from doing the hospital history book. So I had $10,000 left over from that. So I still have some money left, and I would really like it if we could work together on doing this outside somewhere in the outdoor space and make it an outside so that people can sit on the bench and sit and talk about it or whatever. If that's possible, if we could put that there somewhere on the outdoor space. Any questions?
Thank you. I'll open up members of council. Any questions, comments? So I had the pleasure of watching you make that sign over the last 3 years.
I bored you with it.
No, it was very impressive. You worked lots with Clayton, Varjassy as well, and with Mandy at Manic Signs. So to say we appreciate the amount of work that you put into that would be an understatement. Like 5 years, that's a very long time. And coming up this weekend, we get to celebrate you as the Citizen of the Year. So congratulations on that as well. Very well deserved. And this has something to do with that as well. So we will leave it up to administration where we could proudly display this sign. And we'll also look at putting it outside somewhere like you requested as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Open up to council. Any further questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And just further to your comments, I also want to thank former Councillor Doreen Lloyd for all your years of service behind the scenes in so many aspects. And since moving to Coaldale, we have really enjoyed your presence and your passion. You know, Mayor speaks about Coaldale's #1 fan, and I support him as #1 fan and you as equally the #1 fan in Coaldale, mainly because of your work with the Chamber of Commerce over the years as president and other positions on the Chamber of Commerce. Communities in Bloom have been a real passion of yours, and some of the frontal things that you've put out on the highway in terms of the Christmas displays and the Christmas lights all over town, and both you and your husband's work at the Gem of the West Museum as well has been really a delight to see how Coaldale has unfolded, and your product here today tonight is really a testimony of your passion and your love for Coaldale.
Thank you. I would really like to thank Mandy from Manic Signs. Like I said, she's been very patient and worked very hard and did an awesome job. And I'd also like to thank Clarice Santa. She was the chair of the Heritage Committee that actually did the Heritage Walk, where I got quite a bit of information from there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Mayor, and through to Doreen. Thank you for doing that. I was wondering, is that's the only copy of that? Or is there another one can be made that we could put up in the Gem of the West Museum so we have it?
I will be giving one to the Gem of the West Museum as well.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to do that next Wednesday. They changed their meeting from this week to next week, but I've got one made for them.
Okay, thank you.
There's different sizes. This is a larger size. I think there's a smaller size if different businesses want to have it on display, so we can make it different sizes.
Okay, thank you.
Last opportunity, questions, comments? Okay, well, thank you very much, Doreen, and we shall see you on Saturday at the Chamber Awards and Appreciation Banquet.
Thank you. Shut this off.
Moving on to business arising from the minutes, agenda item 6.1. We have our Chief Administrative Officer, Kalen Hastings, presenting on the Alberta Community Partnership ACP grant funding.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking for a resolution from Council to support the ACP grant that Lethbridge County applied for to study the provision of water rights for the Lethbridge County area. And you'll see in the staff report here the municipalities in the Lethbridge County region that were listed as project stakeholders. Well, we learned last week that they were successful in obtaining the ACP grant, and is now, as part of the housekeeping efforts, they need each of these municipalities to make a resolution to support the project if we want to be part of that study. Given that we are in charge of the ACP grant for the study of potable water between Lethbridge and Medicine Hat along the Highway 3 corridor, and Tabor's in charge of the wastewater for that same corridor, I think it would be a good gesture of support if we passed a resolution to support Lethbridge County in the study of the water rights component, because that is a key variable for the potable water study that we're embarking on with the province.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wondering, Kalen, what's the dollar amount of the grant?
I believe the grant was for the full $200,000, and the nice thing about ACP is that there's no matching requirement.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, could I get someone to entertain making a motion that Council provide continued support of the ACP application that Lethbridge County has submitted that will improve irrigation water delivery practices to enhance water supply and availability for the region? Councillor Avery made that motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to bylaws and policies under agenda item 7.1, we have election bylaw 909-GE-02-25 regarding all three readings, and we have our municipal clerk, Lana Antony, presenting. Lana, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor and members of Council. 4 years has gone by fast, so now election year is upon us. The election will take place this year on October 20th, 2025. The municipal elections are held every 4 years, and the last one was held on October 18th, 2021. The last election drew 2 mayoral candidates and 13 councillor candidates. The provincial government passed Bill 20 last year in May and made some amendments to the Local Authorities Election Act as well as the Municipal Government Act that relate directly to and made changes for the municipal election. The most notable changes that affected our municipality are the prohibiting the use of electronic tabulators. The electronic tabulators are used to count the electoral votes in a timely manner, and those are no longer allowed for this election. We also are required to work from an electoral list provided by Elections Alberta, and also limiting the vouching of electors to only an address change. In the previous election, it was a person could vouch for another resident to say that so-and-so has moved here from Lethbridge, but now this election will be only allowed to vouch if a person has moved across Coaldale. So So I included some highlights in my report from the last election, as well as some information related to this. We will be holding 4 advanced voting dates on October 9, 11, 14, and 18, and voting day will be October 20th. Palliser School Division and Holy Spirit have both expressed interest in participating in our election. So in the event that they do have more than one candidate running, they will be have their own ballot that voters can vote for at the election. The Sunny South Lodge has confirmed that they are interested in having a polling station set up on election day in the lodge, and it will be for the lodge residents only. So they will be able to cast their vote. As we did in the last election, we set up a station in the lobby area at the lodge, and so the residents could come down and cast their vote, and it's set up similar to the voting station at the community center. So they do have like a private area that they can cast their vote, and then they put it into a box, which the box is sealed when the 2-hour voting period for them ends, and then the box is brought back to the voting station to be counted at the close of polls. So the nomination period opened up January 1st and concludes at noon on September 22nd. A permanent elector register is a listing of those eligible to vote in Coaldale, and if a person shows up at the polls that is not on the electoral list, they need to produce some ID and then showing that they are a Coaldale resident, and they will be allowed to vote once they sign their forms. The register will be created from the town's GIS system. So what it does is it identifies all of the properties within Coaldale. So we share that information back to Elections Alberta. They populate it with all of the names that they know, and then they give it back. So there will be some gaps of some people that do live here, but they might not be identified on it, so thus showing up with their ID. And as mentioned earlier, vouching is still permittable, provided they just have a different address. The person that is vouching will sign a form to state that. And again, the voting tabulators are prohibited. The tally of votes on election day will be done by hand. Candidates, official agents, and or their scrutineers are invited to stay and observe the count at the close of polls. The nomination booklet is available on the town's website, and the election results will become official on the 4th day following election day. The last election had a 46% voter turnout, which is excellent, and I'm hoping that we can beat that again this election. The council approved the $20,000 budget for the 2025 municipal election, and that is $10,000 less than the last election, considering that the electronic tabulators will not be used. However, we will have an increase in some labor costs that I have taken into account for the people that will be required or needed at the close of polls to do that counting, provided that we get enough interest of people turning out to apply to work the election. I'm hoping to have a complete separate team of fresh eyes to help do the count at the close of polls, and to do it efficiently and to get our results in as soon as we can. So I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have, but otherwise I'm presenting here for all 3 readings of the election bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Beekman.
Thank you, Lana. Thank you for all the work you put into this. Yeah, it is hard to believe 4 years has come by so quickly. Just curious to know, do voters have to prove citizenship as well when they show up to the polls, or is citizenship required for municipal?
If they in order to vote, you do need to be a Canadian citizen. You need to be 18 years old. You are signing a declaration when you do come to the polls. So a person has a personal responsibility as well when signing that declaration, but those are the rules. If a resident would like to contest that, they are welcome to do that by also filling out a form.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor, and through to Lana, thank you as well for all your hard work on this and your very, very elaborate report on the last election. I thought that was really helpful in kind of refreshing our minds in terms of how it worked last time. And of course, without the tabulators, I think that it'll be a little more of a lengthy countdown after the polls close on October the 20th. My question to you is whether you'll have a deputy returning officer or how that will work.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I'm happy to report that there is a deputy returning officer again for this election. It is Jerry Ann Timmerman, and Jerry Ann works in our office at the here at Civic Square, and she was an excellent help to the last election, and I'm pleased to have her on board again.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? One from myself, Lana. So the polls close at 8 o'clock, and then you're going to have a fresh set of eyes to count all the ballots that night. And then you have up to 4 days to make it official.
Thank you for the question. That is my hope, is to have a second team, like provided that we get enough applicants and that we can do a whole separate team, like to count. There might be some that will overlap and or are interested in staying on, but that is my hope. And to have it, I'm going to make a prediction to have the count done within 30 minutes is going to be my goal. And the results will be posted just as they were at the last election. We'll have a board tallying the results, but the numbers that are reported to Elections Alberta become official on the 4th day. So you will still know the results, like at the close of that count.
So back in 2013, when we did them manually, it went quite a bit later. Do you remember how late that went?
I believe that was after 11 o'clock, if my memory serves me.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? So as our presenter mentioned, we're hoping to pass all 3 readings. So I'm looking for someone to sponsor a first reading of election bylaw 909 GE 0225 as presented. Councillor Beekman makes that one. Any further questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And then for second reading of election bylaw 909 GE 0225, we have Councillor Pickering making that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And now we need someone to make a motion that council provide unanimous consent to hold all 3 readings in one meeting for election bylaw 909 GE 0225. We have Councillor Reis making that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And finally, we need someone to sponsor that council approve third and final reading of election bylaw 909 GE 0225. Deputy Mayor Chapman makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Lana. Moving on to agenda item 7.2, the Police Committee Bylaw 910R0225. Again, we're hoping to get all 3 readings passed, and we have our Manager of Community Policing, Mark Anderson, presenting. Mark, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight following up from our Committee of the Whole meeting, bringing forward our Police Committee Bylaw. The Police Act, as you may recall, was amended in 2022 with regulations coming out in 2024, which directs us to form a policing committee under the new police governance regulation. We are directed to either join a regional policing committee or to apply to the minister to form our own policing committee for the town of Coaldale. The regional policing committee would involve towns of our size who are entered into a MPSA with the RCMP. That would be towns like Banff and other areas that are geographically quite a distance from us. It does not, however, allow us to form a policing committee with a county or an agency which are a town that is under 5,000 in population. So that means the closest one that would be possibility for us to form a regional committee would be Bassano, Brooks, those areas. Previous council direction was that we approach the ministry and request permission to form our own Policing Committee for the town of Coaldale, and that letter was sent. So I'm here tonight to present the bylaw, which has been drafted for your approval for all 3 readings, which would allow us to form a policing committee. This bylaw would need to be passed by council and then forwarded along with other documentation, which we have here, to the ministry for his approval. That would allow us to proceed with the forming of a police committee. So what I'm asking for tonight is that council approve all 3 readings of the bylaw as it has been presented, and that you direct administration to proceed with supplying the information to the ministry so that we can proceed in forming a police committee.
Thank you. Before I open it up to members of council for questions, comments, I want to invite Staff Sergeant Newman to come in to the presenter's table as well. And if you could please give us your view from a policing perspective, what this committee will be doing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My attendance today was purely to support CPO Anderson in his 3 presentations today. I knew there may be some questions that maybe Mark wasn't able to answer or feel comfortable answering, so I thought it'd be best that I come. So for this policing committee, this is not a new thing. Other communities that I've been involved with, we have had policing committees. They were, again, mandated or structured by the provincial government, much like they are now. Before, it wasn't a mandate. They didn't have to have a committee. It was up to the community. Now, as I understand it, they are mandated, much like yourself. And as Mark has explained, you can either join a regional one or form your own if you're a town of a certain size and have a municipal police service agreement, which you folks do. So the only issue with committees is potentially it's another committee that we all have to attend and deal with. And I think we do a pretty good job here of meeting in October, taking part in our town halls and those types of things. In order to satisfy the government, I think forming a committee at the town level would address the needs of the town specifically, and maybe would be different than if you were to join with Banff, or they have different needs. So I think to address your needs, this is the way to do it. It's specific, and we can kind of mold the committee into something that's useful for myself as a detachment commander and the town and its residents as well. So I think that's the best option at this point.
Thank you. And then, Mark, if you could explain when citizen members will come into this committee.
Once the committee is launched by council, council can then open up an invitation to citizens within the town who wish to be a member of the policing committee. The policing committee structure that we're proposing is a minimum of 3 members to a maximum of 7 members. The town can decide for itself how many members it actually wants to have at any one time, and also the eligibility for that. The provincial requirement is that however we open it up to the community, we represent the diverse nature of our community within the committee.
Thank you. I'll open up to questions, council. Deputy Mayor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor. And my question through to Community Manager of Community Policing, Mark Anderson. Mark, I'm in support of the bylaw and the proposal moving forward. My question to you in terms of the pilot process, whether it'll be opened up or it'll be reviewed, say, in a few months, whether there might be some changes. I know that there was some recommendations for additional locations in the community, and so for now, I'm in full support of the three areas of Coaldale that you're proposing to include in the bylaw for this time around, and whether it'll be opened up to other close by residences in the future.
Is this question directed at the police committee or would this question be directed to the golf cart bylaw? For golf cart bylaw,
Oh, I'm
I'll
sorry.
come back
Yes.
afterwards
Okay.
for that one.
Sorry. I'm thinking of the golf
apologies.
cart bylaw. So I'll retract my question. Thank you. But I am speaking in favor of this bylaw moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, could I get someone to entertain passing or making a motion to approve first reading of golf cart pilot I'm sorry, now you got me on the golf cart. Approve first reading of the Police Committee Bylaw 910R0225 as presented. Councillor Avery makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And Councillor Beekman makes the motion to approve second reading of Police Committee Bylaw 910R02-25 as presented. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And now I need someone to provide, make a motion to provide unanimous consent to hold all three readings in one meeting for Police Committee Bylaw 910R0225. Councillor Reis makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And then finally, I need someone to make a motion that Council approve third and final reading of Police Committee Bylaw 910R0225. Deputy Mayor Chapman makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Moving on to agenda item 7.3, the Golf Cart Pilot Project 911R0225. Again, we're hoping to pass all three readings. And once again, we have our Manager of Community Policing, Mark Anderson, presenting. And we have our Staff Sergeant, Mike Newman, in attendance as well. Mark, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I am returning here tonight to present for all three readings proposed bylaw that will allow the town of Coaldale to participate in the province announced golf cart pilot project running between 2025 and 2029. The original intent of council, as expressed to administration, was that we craft a bylaw which would allow people who are residents adjacent to the golf course access to the golf course directly. It was not a suggested idea that the golf carts be allowed to use everywhere in town, but just in the communities surrounding the golf course. At Committee of the Whole, when I presented a map which outlined the communities of Cottonwood, Fairway, and Westgate as being those adjacent to the golf course, and proposed that those routes to and from the golf course be included within the scope of the bylaw. At the previous council meeting, Committee of the Whole, council requested that I look at the triangle shape of properties which abuts 24th Street directly across from the golf course, to include those properties in that as well, because they were adjacent to the golf course. And coming here tonight, I have included those. As you'll see, there's an attachment to this agenda item which shows the properties which would be in scope within the bylaw as it's proposed tonight. I'm here to request that we proceed with all three readings this evening and to answer any other questions that might have come up. There were a few at Committee of the Whole which I came prepared this evening to address because we hadn't addressed them fully. The changes that Councillor Reis had proposed to wording have been included in the new bylaw that's prepared here tonight. Council also requested clarification on licensing. The question was posed on whether or not golf carts that cross on the golf cart paths within the golf course, say from one fairway to the next where they cross a roadway, would we in fact need licensing on those carts, even though they're stored at the golf course and never driven elsewise on the roadway? And the Traffic Safety Act of Alberta actually permits that, and it's specifically written into the provincial legislation already that an off-highway vehicle may cross a highway under certain conditions, which I've included in the answer sheet attached to this agenda item. So the answer is yes. We would not need licensing on those carts if they're stored at the golf course and not driven elsewise on the roadways to or from. As far as the other question was, how difficult would it be amending the bylaw after it's passed? And again, within the pilot project for the province, they have allowed for amendments to the bylaw in there, realizing that there are going to be things that will change. We may wish to add further scope to the bylaw or other communities. We may, depending on our assessment of what's going on. So they've made provisions for that so that it's not extremely difficult. All we have to do if we make a change is notify the ministry and send them a copy of whatever the change is. As far as if we decide we don't want to continue with the pilot project, it doesn't work for the town, we only need to notify the ministry. We don't need their approval to stop it. So that was the other question that came up at Committee of the Whole. I'm certainly open to if there was any other questions that came up.
Thank you. So with the question of golf carts, once this pilot project is up and running and somebody is driving over from Garden Grove, let's say, and he or she gets stopped by yourself or by one of the RCMP members, what is the procedures with that?
They'd be charged under the Traffic Safety Act for operating an off-highway vehicle on a roadway.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor. Manager of Community Policing has answered my prior questions, so I don't need to elaborate any further, but I do want to go on record by thanking our MLA Grant Hunter as well for his diligence and hard work to try to get this pilot project off the ground for Coaldale. And I think I want to thank as well Mayor Van Ryan for his diligence on working on that behalf as well.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? One comment or question that I have for the fee, when it was discussed at the Committee of the Whole meeting, that was $100.
Yes, the proposed license fee is $100 for a calendar year.
And the reason for that amount, $100, I was approached by a couple of golfers that have carts that want to utilize this new bylaw, and they already have to pay for using their golf carts on the golf course. I'm not sure what that amount is per year or per round, but they thought that $100 was excessive. So is that just to cover our costs, or can this be like somebody buying a dog license? And that, I don't know how much that even a dog license is, but I'm sure it's not $100.
A dog license fee is $40 for an unaltered, $20 for an altered. As far as the fee goes, council can certainly set the fee at what they feel is reasonable. The $100 fee was what we proposed through the rates and fees bylaw, but that's certainly up to council to direct. The fee for the license was just to offset the cost for printing the licenses and the form handling and the other administrative functions that go along with running this. Setting up our eventual online application process for housing the information. It also covers our requirements for reporting to the province and preparing those quarterly and annual reports. That's really what the fee was to cover, was the administrative time that goes into administering the program.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beekman.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought I was good, but I guess not. Under the scope of the pilot project, I mean, it's hard to gauge bureaucracy, right? But the ease and transition to make changes, is it going to be? Do you foresee it being an easier process? And the reason I'm asking, I'm fully in support of getting this off the ground and getting it going, but I have full intention to bring it back at some point in time to, increase the scope of the boundaries. Once this hit the agenda, I got about 6 phone calls asking, what about here, what about here, what about here, right? So we're going to get a lot of those, and I'm just curious to know. I know a lot of times if you got to submit stuff to the province, it can be quite painful in the time that it takes, but under the pilot project, have they eased, or is there a plan to ease the process to make these changes more rapidly?
If I can use the experience that I've had so far in working with the province on this, they've been responsive. There hasn't been many delays. When they said they were going to put different things on their website right away, it's right there very quickly. I do know, and I've spoken with Lacombe, who started this actually a year before anybody else, and they were able to add in other areas even within the first year when they started the project. So I do not envision a great administrative nightmare to get things added when we need to.
Awesome. Thank you.
Councillor Reis had a question or comment.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn, and through to Mark. Good afternoon, Mark. So this is I have to go back for a second to item 7.2 of the Police Committee bylaw. With all due respect, Deputy Mayor Chapman kind of threw me off with the bylaw question. So I actually had a concern about the bylaw when I reviewed it, and that is on page 21 of 28. And it says 2 members of City Council, and it should read Town Council, please.
Okay. I'll make sure that's amended.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Good job, Staff Sergeant Mark Anderson and your team for coming up with this bylaw. I think it's going to be well received. And I echo Councillor Beekman's comment too, that there'll be more people asking to be able to take their golf carts across town as well. Seeing no more questions. Oh, Councillor Pickering, you're good? Okay. So seeing no more questions, comments, we're going to need someone to make a motion, and Councillor Pickering is going to make a motion that council approve first reading of golf cart pilot project bylaw 911R0225 as presented. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you unanimously. Looking for someone to sponsor motion to approve second reading of golf cart pilot project bylaw 911R0225. Councillor Reis makes that motion. Any further discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And now I need someone to make a motion that council provide unanimous consent to hold all 3 readings in one meeting for the golf cart pilot project bylaw 911R0225. Councillor Saylor makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And now we need someone to make a motion that council approve third and final reading of the golf cart pilot project bylaw 911-R-02-25. Deputy Mayor Chapman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on to new business. Agenda item 8.1, we have our Community Services Operations Manager, Scott Boyd, presenting on the Shift Community Recreation Center Combined Membership Report. And just for clarification, Councillor Saylor wanted to recuse himself for this. And there's no monetary asks of this, correct?
That's
so
correct.
Whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for your time today to review the performance of the first 3 months of the combined membership at the Shift Community Recreation Center. On September 16th, 2024, Council approved the combined membership as an added membership option for users at the Shift Community Recreation Center between the town and Twisted Steel. It has so far been viewed as a welcomed addition to the membership options offered at the Shift Community Recreation Center. Jumping to the report, the summary, since October, the combined membership option between the town and Twisted Steel has been successfully implemented at the Shift Community Recreation Center, and members have embraced the program, benefiting from an enhanced access to both facilities. Now into some metrics. The total sales revenue, just over $5,000. Member acquisition, 68 new members. And the member retention of those members is sitting at 94%. The data analysis, you can see by the pie graph in the below that you can see the total membership of the combined members makes up just over 30.8%, which is the most out of all membership types. Lastly, and most telling, you can see by the simple bar graph that you can see some positive trends of total members in relation to when the combined membership option was introduced in October, moving from 338 to 419. And I'm happy to report 517 members currently after January 31st, 2025. Lastly, I'll talk through two member feedbacks. One was from Mike Williamson in person, mentioning that he wasn't sure I'd use both facilities when I signed up, but now I can't imagine not having this membership. The flexibility is so nice. And I need to add in that it's an awesome deal from Facebook. As we move into 2025, we ask that Council reviews the current performance of the combined membership program and provides feedback on the potential improvements to ensure continued success. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I'll open it up to members of council. Any questions, comments? Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. The one thing I have been getting a lot of feedback on is with the dual membership is there's a lot of bookings. So each night somebody wants to go to use it for basketball or volleyball, but it's always been booked by another group. Is there any way that we can look at those bookings? So if there are people my age, we book it in the daytime rather than 7 o'clock at night because we got nothing better to do in the daytime?
Thank you, Councillor Avery. Yes, that's something that we can look into. Currently, when we looked at the entire schedule from a community aspect, we saw that there was a good balance, but hearing feedback is great, and that's something that I can take back to the team and continue to evaluate. Thank you.
Thank you. And Scott and I had a little discussion this afternoon at the water cooler, and I warned him I was going to bring this up. So myself and I'm sure other members of council are being asked by seniors if there's any programs available for them just for the walking track, so that instead of having to pay a drop-in fee, that there's a possibility that we could get somebody to sponsor something for seniors once or twice a week where they could go and use the facility for free, just a walking track.
Thank you, Mayor. Great question and great feedback. That's something that I've already taken note of, and I appreciate the conversation and something that I'll bring back to our program coordinator, Caitlin Davis, for sure. I appreciate that.
And then Clayton was waving in the background there. Clayton Varjassy. Clayton, if you want to introduce yourself, and then if you want to speak to this.
Hello, my name is Clayton Varjassy. I'm the Community Experience Manager with the Town of Coaldale. Just touching on that, sorry, I've got my phone here. I just want to make sure I get the date and time right. So starting this Wednesday at 9 a.m., there's a seniors walking group, and that'll be free to seniors, and it is free because of a sponsorship from the Andres. And it will also include coffee and refreshments for them. So that's happening on Wednesdays, starting this Wednesday from 9 till 10 a.m.
So every Wednesday,
yeah.
What time?
9 a.m.
And who's sponsoring that?
The Andres.
Thank you. Councillor Reis had a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Through to Clayton. Would it be possible to change that time on some Wednesdays? Because I've heard from some residents that some seniors, that 9 a.m. just doesn't work for them. They prefer to go later in the afternoon.
Yeah, we can definitely look at like alternative times moving forward. This is the first of this type of event, so we're going to see how it goes. But yeah, we can definitely look into that.
Deputy Mayor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor, and Clayton or Scott. Thank you so much for bringing this forward. I like the idea of seniors walk-in times. I guess my question to you is that if it's going to be a free time, are you looking for sponsors for those free slots in the day or evening as opposed to an actual free event?
Yeah. So this one is sponsored, and the sponsorship dollars it'll continue until the sponsorship dollars run out, and then we'll see if they want to continue to sponsor that. Just to clarify, though, it's actually just a walking group. It's not like the whole facility, so it's just on the walking track.
And so maybe further to this question, Mayor, then the walking track itself really isn't a scheduled event. I mean, people can use it at any time of day or evening for that matter. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm running through to Scott. I've had some residents inquire about our drop-in times. Like they went over there to use like the climbing facility and stuff. Is it always the same time every day? Like or is it booked out in the morning?
Great question, and thank you, Councillor Pickering. Really what it looks like is there's drop-in times for that exact use that we protect. We won't book over, we won't rent. So there's times that we protect within the schedule for each space. A good example is even the track. We won't rent out all 3 lanes on the track. We'll always leave one open. But for uses like, or spaces like the Indoor Play Center, there are times where it is booked, but there's always times where we won't book it. And we're gaining that feedback, knowing what the most popular time may be and making some adjustments as we can. So,
thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? So Scott, just clarification on the motion in your staff report that you have here, that you're looking for a motion that council provides any feedback for continued improvement for the Shift Community Recreation Center combined membership report and receive for information. Does that capture it then?
that captures it. Thank you.
Okay, anybody care to make that motion? Councillor Beekman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried with Councillor Saylor abstaining. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Moving on to agenda item 8.2. We have our municipal clerk, Lana Antony, presenting on the invitation we received to the town of Tabor's 120th anniversary celebration. Lana, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. The town of Tabor is holding their 120th anniversary on June 30th of this year, which happens to also be the same date as our regular council meeting. So I'm presenting before council today to see if council would like to reschedule the council meeting. They are happening both at the same time at 5 p.m. on that day. In my report, I included some alternate dates if council would like to change the time and date. There was Monday, June 23rd at 5 p.m. or keeping it on the same day of June 30th, starting the council meeting at 2 p.m. And then also Wednesday, July 2nd, being because July 1st is the stat holiday, moving it to 5 p.m. on that date. Or if council sees any other alternate dates to suggest. And I did include a calendar of all of our current scheduled dates as of now. I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for our presenter? Would July 2nd, 2025 at 5 p.m. work for members of council? Councillor Beekman.
I'll object any dates. I don't feel we should change our meeting. So I'm just gonna be against any of the dates presented.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Does anybody care to make a motion for any of those other dates? There's a motion on the floor by Councillor Avery to move our council meeting to Wednesday, July 2nd at 5 p.m. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Pickering and Beekman are opposed. The motion is carried. Thank you, Lana. Moving on to agenda item 8.3. We have a property tax refund request, and we have our Chief Financial Officer and Deputy CAO, Kyle Beauchamp, present. And Kyle, whenever you're ready.
Thanks and good evening, Council. So I'm here to present to you a refund request from 105 Station Boulevard in Coaldale, roll number 497921051. This was a modular home property in which the executive for the estate was cleaning up that property, and the home was moved off the property on September 19th. The executive for the state did contact the town inquiring about a refund of property taxes already paid for 2024, with the property being moved out. This was a unique situation in which we haven't, administratively, we haven't experienced something like this before. So after a little bit of research, it was determined that this type of situation is not uncommon for other municipalities, but it is uncommon for the town of Coaldale. Feedback I got was that municipalities that do have something like this in place generally look at adopting some sort of policy or procedures to outline instances in which a tax refund would be applicable. For instance, talking about the property being moved off the lot, but also fire damage, whatnot, were other examples I was provided. The adoption of some type of policy like that does take a little bit of work and research that would be better suited for a summer project. Considering the timing of this request, we are just bringing this forward to council as a one-off request. So calculating this, the total refund that would be received if council was to approve this would be $245.83. As far as reviewing the rationale, administration doesn't see a practical reason to deny the request. It is reasonable in nature. However, ultimately, any cancellation or adjustments to property taxes under the MGA are solely up to council's purview. So that being said, I will turn it back to council for any questions on this request.
Thank you. I'll open it up for any questions, comments for our presenter. Deputy Mayor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor, and through to Kyle, thank you so much for bringing this forward. I will speak in favor of the refund, mainly in the fact that I think from your experience, this is not a precedence. Be number one. Number two would be that there weren't any other damages that would have resulted in any other fees that we would have had to collect.
Certainly. So this is the first type of request that we have received. The type of situation where a modular home gets moved off a property. There have been more instances like this where this has happened in the past, but this is the first time we've had somebody come up to us with this request. As far as any damages, the land is owned by the trailer owner there, so the property was moved off, and we don't have any outstanding liability on the property that may have required a payment of fee or collection of fee for that matter.
Just maybe one more final question, Mayor. I think in your report you mentioned if other circumstances where a property was, for example, there was a fire, the property was cleaned up, and so there is a request for the difference in tax returned. Is that something you see as well?
Yeah, so it kind of in talking to our municipal assessor and what the benchmark for something like this is, these are the two examples that we were provided. One, like if a property gets moved off, or two, it's essentially destroyed. The best case, not the best case, but the most obvious example being a fire. Something like that we would be better defined, having a policy like that to identify that going forward, but that does take a little bit of work. And we are going to look at that into the summer, but bringing this request as a one-off to council before that.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. And Mayor, I'd be prepared to make a motion that we approve the property tax refund as recommended.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Deputy Mayor Chapman that council approve a refund of $245.83 in property taxes for roll number 497921051. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Oh, opposed? Councillor Avery is opposed. Motion is carried. Thank you, Kyle. Moving on to agenda item 8.4, we have the Coaldale 5K Family Fun Run for 2025. And we have Clayton Varjassy, our Community Experience Manager, presenting. And also in the gallery, we have Jacob Weeb. Jacob, if you want to come join Clayton up at the, I know you're trying to sneak under the radar, but it's not going to happen. Clayton, whenever you're ready.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. So Coaldale Christian School is pleased to announce that they will be hosting the 14th annual 5K Family Fun Run on Saturday, April 12th, 2025. The fun run is made possible through that of both participation and generous sponsorship. The event organizers' past focus on promoting local businesses will continue. The town of Coaldale has provided support from the very beginning at various levels. In 2017, we became a platinum sponsor at $1,000. And additionally, we have continued to encourage staff participation with the payment of their entry fees. This year, the entry fee is $22 per adult participant and an additional $15 for a t-shirt and $2 extra for an adult 2XL or 3XL. The stated goals of the Coaldale Family Fun Run are to encourage healthy outdoor activity, enhance family time, and bring cohesiveness to the town of Coaldale. They always support a local charity every year by donating $2 from every entry. And this year, the charity is the Coaldale Food Bank. And then the proceeds from the actual run this year are going toward two causes. One is to support the Connect Club of Coaldale in revitalizing the playground at the Kin Skate Park. And the other is to support the Friends of St. Joseph's in their playground expansion at the St. Joseph's School in Coaldale. So some key considerations. Volunteer community groups such as this have a very positive impact on the physical and mental health of our community. The town's ongoing commitment is minimal, but very helpful when considering the event's value. So in the past, there have been as few as a handful of town council and staff members participate and as many as 20. And that includes not just the paid runners, but like friends and family on the town team as well. So the financial impact is projected to be up to $481 if the participation fee and t-shirts are paid for, or $286 if only. That actually shouldn't be worded up to. That's just what it's projected to be. It might be a little higher than that if we get more participants this year. Or $286 if only the participation fee is paid for. Funds would come from council's promotional budget, which has an annual allocation of $15,000. In 2024, covering only participation fees, the total cost was $286 to cover 13 out of the 16 registrants on the town's team. So only staff and council are covered. Family and friends on the town's team were not. In 2023, covering both participation fees and t-shirts, the total cost was $382 to cover 13 out of the 22 registrants on the town's team. And that was based on a $20 registration fee and $12 t-shirt cost. So one other thing to note is that the town of Coaldale has already budgeted $1,000 to put toward a platinum sponsorship again for 2025. So we do plan to do that regardless, and that comes out of the community services budget. So the three options outlined here are that option one, enter a town of Coaldale team, pay the registration fee of $22 per participant, and direct community services to collect council and staff registrations, which is the same option you went with last year. Total estimated cost is $286 based on 13 sponsored participants. Option two would be to enter a town of Coaldale team and pay for the registration fee as well as the t-shirts. Total estimated cost on that is $481 based on 13 participants. And then option number three is to not pay for anything.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for Clayton? Jacob, not to put you on the spot, but if you turn on your microphone and maybe talk a little bit about the run, if there's any changes from last year, and if there's anything that Clayton missed that you wanted to bring up.
No, we keep it pretty much the same. We have dabbled with maybe changing the route, but that takes a lot of time and prep. Especially, we have a course marker who like measures it out pretty professionally, so it's a lot of work for him. So we don't try and change too much. Yeah, the run is the same. We just change up our causes yearly just to try and help people. We give out prizes frequently as well. And this year we were thinking with the new shift rec center, I've been pursuing trying to get passes, like 10 punch passes that we could give away just so we recycle more back into the town of Coaldale, our prizes. So that's one big thing that we're kind of excited about this year.
Thank you. Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Clayton and Jacob. I think it's a worthwhile event for our town. It brings in hundreds of people, and I would like to sponsor a motion for option 2.
Thank you. Just before I call the question on motion 2, just wanted to bring up a comment from a couple of the runners that participate, and they do lots of the races, is the canal bank, the gravel. So is there any way that you've ever measured out that we can use our walking trails that would make up that distance?
Thank you, Mayor. We did have the run go on that side of the canal in the past. We ended up switching it 1 year before it was paved for that short portion because that side was more dirt than gravel and it had precipitated prior that week, so it was fairly muddy. So we thought to just put it on the south side that there was more gravel there and less mud would be tracked and easier for people in strollers and such. But I can bring it up with our course marker, and we have done it in the past before, and weather permitting, if it's still dirt, then it would be, whether it's wet or dry, that we would go down that side.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, there is a motion on the floor by Councillor Avery for option 2 that the town of Coaldale enters a team, pays a registration fee of $22 per participant, and pay the t-shirt fee of $15 per participant, and direct community services to collect council and staff registrations for a total estimated cost of $481 based on 13 sponsored participants. Any further discussion on Councillor Avery's motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Jacob, make sure you pass on to your wife Esther and to Tia Vanderhyde for all the hours you guys put into this. It's a huge commitment. Thank you. Moving on to information items under 12.1 and 12.2. We have the Council Chamber of Commerce meeting minutes from December the 4th, and we have the Coaldale Library meeting minutes from November 19th. Are there any questions or comments on either of those two information items? Seeing none, could I get someone to make a motion that Council receive items 12.1 and 12.2 as information? Councillor Saylor makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. That concludes the open portion of the meeting. So I will require someone to make a motion that council go into closed session at 6:08 p.m. in accordance with section 197-4-B of the Municipal Government Act to discuss matters exempt from disclosure for items 13.1, 13.2, 13.3, subject to section 16, business interests of a third party, and items 13.2, 13.3, subject to section 25, economic and other interests of a public body, and item 13.3, subject to section 17, personal privacy. Who cares to make that motion for 6:09 p.m.? Councillor Reis makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously.